Hey folks, this is Ben Gessel. How's it going? Um, this video is gonna go deeper for sure, for darn sure. Um, yeah, I'm almost dreading talking about it, but it's not necessarily an uncomfortable subject. It's just that there's a difference of opinion, I suppose, with this whole subject, but um, there's a psychological dimension to it. And I've mentioned things before about music and martial arts and things. And I've also made a recent video about knowing kind of where you're at musically, skill wise, and sort of thing with these piano and French horn and stuff, and maybe composition a little bit. But I didn't really talk about composition so much, I suppose. But the last video, this video is all about kind of like you're comparing. I guess you could say like the best people in different pursuits. Kind of like who's the best. This competitive kind of train of thought. It's and there's that question of who can beat up who regarding martial arts guys, right? And that whole continuing debate about actual real skill level versus just who can hurt the other person, right? The weight class thing, or the how conditioned you are, how thick your bones are, how your weight class is, and are you in the prime of your life and peak condition? Versus what um, how much do you know, and how much do you really know, and um, if you had the same kind of body as the other person, would you have no problem taking him out, kind of thing, that kind of thing. And also comparing us more this is more, I suppose, performance oriented, but also composition. How do you compare musicians in that regard? And it's tough, and it's uncomfortable, and it's complex because there's a lot of different factors going on. Just regarding martial arts, for instance, I've tried to watch stuff. I've asked people about knowledgeable people, people like masters in martial arts, face to face, and say, folks, I've asked people pretty elite, in martial arts about all this stuff, like who's top of their game, who are the best guys, and I've looked at, of course, a lot of YouTube research, right? And before we get to music in this regard, I just want to say that there should still be a distinction between someone's real skill level and how dangerous they are. There actually is a difference. It's not always easy to make that distinction, but particularly if we're talking about old age, you don't beat up elderly people, and elderly folks, guys that are still really stinking tough, can beat up younger folks, or even that much more impressive. Holy crud, yeah. If you see an 80-year-old take out a 20-year-old who's in top shape, that's imagine. I have no words. Like it's pretty insane, but yeah, there is a difference between how dangerous someone is physically and how actually good they are. And it's something that we're still talking about. We still have some confusion about. There's still, I don't know if it's confusion, but there's still some of the best martial artists in the world are still not sure about this stuff. That's how deep it goes. That's how uncertain it is. And sometimes we want these clear-cut answers to questions like, how good is this guy? And could you take out this guy? And we seem to forget that, no, there are weight classes for a reason. At least, you have weight classes for people that are in top shape. And that's why we have different, I don't know, belt things are kind of sometimes not very well thought of sometimes. But you do want to have, I don't know, you're certainly not going to put a little kid against an adult. That's ridiculous. But when you have a real white belt versus a real black belt, I mean a real one, yeah. But it's also important, not to underestimate your opponent, right? It's important not to put too much stock in a belt. A belt is just a belt, But you just don't do that, right? And you don't put a 100-pound, even somebody who's in top shape, really tough, 100-pound guy up against a 300-pound muscle man who's a few heads taller than him. That's just, no, you don't do that. Always exceptions to the rule, right? But they're pretty rare. We know about Bruce Lee. We know how tough he was. If Bruce Lee could take on Bolo Yeung and, handle that kind of sized guy, yeah, Mike Tyson, yeah, Muhammad Ali. Maybe Muhammad Ali would win. Maybe it could go either way. I think it's still a great, thing to wonder about. But imagine how much pain Bruce could take and still keep going. So I don't know, but yeah, people are not. A lot of people aren't really sure about it. We're not really sure about it because there's a lot of things that come into play with a sparring thing. Are you sparring? Is it a tournament thing or is it a real fight? And the real fights are pretty rare. Even a fight that's real isn't a fight to the death. You wouldn't. The best martial artists wouldn't they wouldn't do certain things. Certain strikes that would be lethal. They wouldn't do that because they don't want to kill him. So that's a different kind of fight. Imagine a fight where someone actually ends up killing somebody. Does that mean that person won the fight? Yeah, but he killed somebody. Yeah. So a lot of people just don't like to think about that stuff too much because that's that side of martial arts that's grim. I don't know. So let's get into music again. Some of the things that I'm more skilled at naturally. Because I'm not a total complete wimp, but that's how it is on YouTube. That's how it is in the world, right? If you're not that skilled in something, then a lot of folks will just ignore what you have to say. It's a fallacy. Depends on what it is. If you can learn anything from anybody, even if they're not that good at something, but if there's something to that, you should still see what you can learn from somebody. And if you're not that way, if you think that the only things that there are to learn are from people that are extremely good at something, you might be really good, sure. But just imagine what you would ignore or never learn. And everybody has something to teach. Everyone. The only way you can really learn that is if you listen. I mean, can you think of somebody that doesn't have anything to teach you, really? Anything to talk about that you could benefit from? if I listened, right? So let's get into music here a little bit. There's there's same thing with martial arts. There's so many great performers on various instruments and great composers, and we have different preferences for composers. We can try to compare IQs. We can try to compare all this stuff, and compare how accurately they play and how musically they play, and which performances you like the most, and we hear that sometimes you have some people that are considered to be like the common consensus is that this person's the best in their game. Fine, that's great. What is being the best in the world? What's the benefit of that? Bragging rights? You can charge more for your performances. You'll get more people at your performances and just do better financially. Be more well respected throughout the world. Musically, is that the payoff? What about that compared to somebody who's stinking good, but they're not that like the best? Debatably, would they get paid less? Would they be less well known? Would their ego be crushed? They weren't their absolute best. What about somebody who's still professional, but they're not as well known? And so on and so forth. Well, money is money. Fame is fame. Being happy with your ability, or happy when you improve your ability, happy when you work towards something, and less happy when you're not working towards something, right? I mean, there are things that run deeper than money and fame. And so, on some level, and it's the same deal with martial arts, but we'll get back to martial arts here in a bit. The purpose of life is to have a fullness of joy. There's a lot of things associated with that. There's knowledge and there's experiences and all this stuff. The ultimate purpose of life is to, have that happen. That's the ultimate purpose. We can get into all the details why that is. When someone is very skilled at something, but they're just not very happy with their career, especially with their skill. I mean, they're at a high skill level, but they're not very happy when they're involved with that activity for whatever reason. There's a problem. Now, of course, improving at something is not fun a lot of times. So it's kind of a question of, is the, I mean, what's the balance of, there's always a balance with everything, with everyone, with everything we do. It's kind of how much are you getting out of it, and how much do you feel like you're improving, and how much are you really enjoying what it is you're doing versus how much does it take out of you? How much pain and grief and sorrow and sacrifice and discipline and all that stuff is going into it. And if it's not worth it, if you put in more than you're getting out of something, that can't be good. Someone could be one of the best people in the field, in a certain field in the world, but if they had an issue with how happy they were doing that thing, or a real serious issue, or they just felt a lack of purpose, or why do it? Or I've been the best in the world, or I'm this best, really amazing, whatever, and I want to try something different now because I just don't feel like this is very challenging anymore. I just don't feel like there's a lot of purpose behind it. I mean, what's the point? And I don't want to be famous, or I don't want fame anymore. I don't know. It's hard to say people turn down money, but I want to just do this other thing, right? No. You see what I'm saying? It's like There are things. There are things in life that go deeper and run stronger than pursuing something with the aim of being the best of the best. There are things that run deeper than that. And, you know, if someone truly, debatably is the best of the best at something, when they get to be the best of the best in the world, it's all a question of whether or not they have. It's all a question of whether or not they realize that that's a big part of what they really wanted or not. It's if that really is something that so that they wanted to be the best of the best. Let's take Lang Lang for instance. So Lang Lang was like, I'm going to be the best pianist in the world, and that's what his goal when he's younger. Now that he's considered at least one of the very best, not the very best. Well, so what is he doing now? He got that. He got to that point. So he was happy with his playing. So now, again, what do you see Lang Lang doing? Well, he's still giving performances. He's still playing the snot out of stuff. But you see him making like YouTube videos, and he's teaching kids and stuff. And he's still giving performances. And he's made some method books for beginners and stuff. That's what Lang Lang's doing. And when he gets older, he might do some other things. And that's totally fine. And every musician, every martial artist is different. But what I'm trying to say is that it comes down to, these things that we put so much time and effort in. You get to a point, get to these different points in ability level, and we're always asking ourselves, well, do you want to keep going? And how much time is that going to take? How much sacrifice is that going to take? Really? To get to that point? Really? We don't always know how hard it's going to be. Sometimes we I want to just keep going, right? Sure, that's the way I kind of have this blind, like, I just want to keep getting better, right? I didn't know how much it would take out of me to do Muay Thai. I really didn't. I really didn't. But yeah, it most definitely takes everything out of you. If it's real. And that was still worth it, I think, in my opinion, to go through that. I could go through it again. I'm glad I didn't go into the military because I was never really, that's not me. Besides, I don't want to kill. Why would I want to kill people? You kind of have to, I don't know if you want to enjoy killing, but you have to kind of, this is the stuff that traumatizes people. You kind of need to have a pretty, you have to have a mindset to actually go to war. And you have to also have a mindset to actually fight for real. A certain mindset. In either case, if you don't quite have that mindset, it's just not going to be good. And as a musician, this is what I'm getting to a bit. There's a performance mindset that we've tried to work toward, and that many people struggle with. I still struggle with stuff, sure. And so sometimes what you see in terms of regarding musicians and their ability, real ability level, is you'll see their performance, their ability to perform for other people, but you won't always see their actual real overall ability. You won't always see that. You'll just see their performance ability. Again, it's the ability to perform in front of other people. But there's all kinds of things that you're not seeing. You're only seeing how well they can manage their stage fright and how well they can execute in public what they have practiced. That's what you're seeing. With composition, when you hear something that somebody wrote, you're hearing what they've heard in life, what they've processed internally, what they know internally, what the knowledge of harmonies and rhythms and instruments and how to balance them all, and sounds and styles of music, and you just keep going, right? It's all about music theory. It's all about the harmony. It's all about the ear training, all that stuff. And then you're hearing someone's, of course, you're hearing aesthetic preferences, or things that just you hear their unique voice, right? All this stuff. So a more skilled composer, it's hard to know who that is, rather than compared to performer, but you can still have some very, very, very extremely good musicians that aren't always necessarily the best performers, the very best performers. And you might have some people that are very highly thought of as performers, but maybe a lot of folks think, no, they're not really that great. So there's a lot of things we like or dislike about different folks in terms of their playing. You can always look at accuracy in things. You can always look at musicianship or their musicality, whatever. Or other things too. I mentioned this was a hard subject. I mentioned that and I mentioned that there are people that are very elite in these fields that sometimes have disagreements about this stuff. So, I mean, just as an example of what I'm talking about, just as an example, just tonight, sure, this still goes on. Oh, something I can't remember when I wrote it. So many things, I'm commenting on YouTube on so many things. Some Frank Dukes thing or something, Bloodsport. Somebody thinks Frank Dukes could beat up Bolo Jung and Jean-Claude Van Damme. So apparently Jean-Claude Van Damme, even though he won some stuff in Europe and was a second-degree black belt and karate or something, some style of karate over in Europe, and Bolo is, one of Bruce Lee's students and all this weightlifting experience and all this other kinds of martial arts things he did. And he's really, really super strong. Can bench press like 700 pounds. Despite all this guy thought that Frank Dukes could beat him up, no problem. Some websites say that Frank Dukes is full of crap, and other websites say actually no, it's legitimate. So the debate continues. Frank is a tall guy. He looks pretty strong. He can handle himself pretty well in a fight. See the same things about Steven Seagal. You hear Joe Rogan talk about Steven Seagal. Hey, he's legit, right? Well, Steven Seagal is aging, just like we all are. We all age. We're not invincible forever. I'm looking at his conditioning, Seagal's conditioning. I'm also looking at his physical strength. But, I tried to explain to folks that Steven Seagal, in his prime, he was really in good shape. Yeah. No, I fear that guy. You take somebody featherweight division, MMA, anybody with good cardio can strike really hard. Someone my height, 5'8", really good conditioning again. You know what? No. I see what shape Seagal is in. He's gonna be a chubby boy, man. And to stay slim, you got to do certain things. It's a discipline thing. I mean, he knows a lot of stuff, but how many other McDojo, especially McDojo masters or senseis have huge guts. You know, so Frank Dukes, it's unclear how good he is because we just don't know. So I'm suspicious, and you know what kind of fighter Bolo Jung is. You know what he can do in a fight, and you have a pretty good idea what Jean-Claude could do, and they have a little different skills. You know, oh man. And this guy was saying that Frank Dukes could take both those guys out. Tell you what, man. No matter what Frank thinks he could do, between Bolo Jung's power, his physical strength and power, Jean-Claude's speed, holy crap. I'm calling 911 to get someone to get Dukes to the hospital ASAP. No, and Bruce Lee, he sparred pretty fairly hard contact with Bolo Jung. Yeah, Bruce Lee is a real fighter. He was real. Can take a beating and keep going. And so Michael J. White, for instance, talks about actors versus real fighters, and Jean-Claude's an actor, and so Michael J. White, for instance, talks about how not quite the same thing, but Michael J. White's talking about that whole train of thought. He's talking about actors versus martial artists and who makes money doing what, and it's a little bit different train of thought than who could actually beat up someone. To one person, the other person, who's most likely to have the upper hand, and it's always a wild card. Well, if you get two fairly good people, but so there's still a difference there between a professional fighter and an actor who's been a professional fighter, probably. You see, we're talking about sometimes different things there, and it's easy for me to say, so Jean-Claude isn't that tough of a guy because he's not, because Michael J. White said he was. Well, but Michael J. White was talking about professional fighters who that's their livelihood is fighting, and they just take that abuse all the time, versus actors that don't go through that, at least not while they're being an actor. Maybe they went through that when they're a professional fighter. And maybe if you have closer to full contact movies you do, maybe you can kind of get into that element a little bit. And it's like, teaching versus performing versus composing. It's the same deal. They're related. They're all related. But the more that you're doing something at a very high level, the more it's going to push you, when I'm teaching, and I'm teaching very advanced students on the piano, you better believe I'm going to be making improvements in my own playing. They might not be very apparent to me, but yeah, these little things that I know will be strengthened. Fingers get a little quicker over time. Showing stuff to students, sure. I freely admit it. It's the same deal with if you're a sensei in a martial arts dojo. You're a Sifu, whatever. You're going to get better helping these lesser skilled folks get better as well. But if you're, the performing end of music and the actual sparring, and especially tournament fights and real fights, if you do those things, you definitely can get better, especially if you have really good teachers. And some things are more effective than other things in martial arts, sure. Some things are more deadly. Some things are just chances are you're going to have the upper hand in something that's not going to be as lethal. And some things are more geared toward tournament fighting, where you don't really want to hurt the other person. You're just going after points. I would probably make part 2 or 3 of this, easily. But sobering reminder for all this is that there's always some room for your own viewpoints, your own thoughts. Yeah, the science and the arts, they're not always super concrete. It's not always clear what's really going on. It's a learning process. We're still learning this stuff. as humanity. We have all the combined knowledge of all the earlier generations on this stuff, and we're trying to figure out what's the best or what's most effective things and methods and musical methods and martial arts, what are more effective martial arts, and what martial arts are best for health, even outside of combat, and different body shapes, and a woman's body is different than a man's body. So there's all kinds of things that go into all this stuff. So there's always room for different opinions. And so sometimes the arguments get a little bit tiresome. Even we're talking about music here. We're talking about comparing two different performers. You just want to be the best you can be. And sometimes the competition is good to help you improve. But, it's not always clear. You can't always say that you're better than somebody else or this other person is better than you. Because there is always the question of who's going to work harder in the future, who's actually more naturally skilled at some other things that you're not thinking about, and if this person actually is better than you at this one skill, then there's all these other skills that you can still pursue as well that they're not pursuing. All kinds of reasons why nobody should feel inferior. None of us want to feel inferior, but we also want to know. We want to know where we stand. We want to get better. And so there's many questions, many answers still that haven't been asked or not been answered yet. Let's keep at it, folks. With both fields, both general fields. Leave me thoughts, comments below. Catch you guys later. Take care. Bye.